everybody, welcome back to Love Money Venus. I am Emily Litzel. I'm your astrologer. If it's your first time here, I do a lot of astrology and put together these weekly forecasts for not only what to expect in the markets, but also what to expect for your own personal development. So starting off, we have our new moon in Aquarius, and that's kind of the big headline of the first 2 days of the week, Monday and Tuesday. The sun and the moon are going to meet in Aquarius right next to Saturn. And that is tricky because Aquarius is ruled by Saturn. So Saturn is home and domicile. Normally, this is a place of full strength for Saturn, but at the moment, Saturn is so close to the sun that it's considered under the beams. That in some ways can make Saturn like a little less efficient. It can make him a little more. Today is very much like you have to light your own fire for this day, because that new moon is an opportunity to plant seeds, to start something that matters to you, to start something that you want to see bloom over this 2-week lunar cycle and then beyond. It's very powerful lunar magic to use new moons for beginnings in whatever area that sign or that house for you hold. That practice on its own without adding anything else in can change your life, but this new moon, you are not going to want to do it. Like, you're just not going to feel like you have the energy for that. This looks a lot like beating yourself up for how you used to be, like how you used to function. Maybe sometime when you were trying to do like something that you're doing now and you failed. Like, I could see a lot of people being held back by previous failures and not being able to envision a future where they're not going to like fuck it all over again. But if you are having some kind of performance anxiety, if you are starting to come up with stuff of like imposter syndrome, if you've been working really hard on a certain path, or you've already been using all this Capricorn energy to make manifest something that matters to you, this could be a point where you're really seriously considering like throwing in the towel. And Saturn is all about doing it when you really don't want to do it. Like, just because it feels bad doesn't mean it's wrong. Just because it feels good doesn't mean that it's right. But with Saturn, it's really the task of understanding the things that we do for reasons that don't unveil themselves right at that moment. Saturnian things are like saving, in a bank account. It doesn't look like much when it's like $20 out of your paycheck, or $500, whatever that is to you, a small manageable amount, but it accrues over time. Saturn rules time, so his benefits are the ones that collect, they compound, right? It's not something that you do at once and you get this big windfall. All of those questions might be swirling around your head during this new moon, and this is a really good time to start looking at whatever Pluto and Mercury have been uncovering about what your specific blocks are. Okay, what does your head tell you that keeps you from accomplishing the things that you say you're going to do? There is something that you absolutely have to make your peace with, because you cannot take the indecision with you. And when you have made your peace with that, then you're going to be moving into this new moon phase of the Aquarian innovator that is going to figure out a way to make it workable, make it more than a chore, and find some way to make that into something that you can carry for a very long time. Tuesday is just going to be a continuation of the energy. There's not a whole ton that shifts, to be completely honest with you. Venus is still stationary at the same spot she was at. The moon is pulled past a Saturn conjunction and is making its way into Pisces, where it's going to take up residence on Wednesday, and that's where things get very interesting. So on Wednesday, the moon is moving from its detriment into its exaltation in Pisces, and almost immediately in the day going to hit a conjunction to Jupiter, a very, very fortunate, bountiful looking conjunction, right? There's a ton of stuff that's going on. We have a sextile from Mars to Jupiter, which is this really energized confidence, okay? Total 180 from where we were in the beginning of the week, where we're trying to like give ourselves pep talks and like positive thinking. But Wednesday, we move into this day, and this is the day where all the magic can happen, because whatever you've made your peace with at this new moon, this is the part where it's like you've jumped and now the net is going to appear. The net of confidence, the net of belief, right? Like, okay, I've got this. Like, seriously, maybe this is going to happen, guys. Like, that is Jupiter and Neptune trying to like gas your emotions up and get you to believe that you have actually more than the ability. You have the talent and the skill to take on whatever it's been shown to you that you're going to have to take on, whether you want to or not. There's a couple of other things that we want to pay attention to. Now that the moon has moved into Pisces, we still have to deal with the sun co-present with Saturn. This is kind of like a very, this is like a heavy on the head lays the crown situation, right? This is where diamonds are made under pressure, right? This is all of the pressure that you can take, and it's starting to build because the sun is day by day moving into an exact conjunction with Saturn, the Cazimi, that is also coming up a little bit later in the week. So we have these two contrasting vibes, right? We have this very hopeful, expansive Moon, Jupiter, Neptune situation. And then we have Sun, Saturn kind of just like really tethering us to whatever reality we're not being able to escape from. Okay, so Thursday, we've got the moon pulling past Jupiter and coming to conjunct Neptune, which is more of, it's less of Jupiter's big idealism and like, we can do this. And now we're starting to get into like maybe like the desire to kind of like pull away from it again, or disassociate a little bit, like let ourselves just tune out in front of Netflix. And luckily Jupiter is like still right here, kind of like energizing the conversation, but it kind of starts to morph like back briefly into, you start wobbling from like the total lack of conviction that you had at the beginning of the week, but you forced yourself through it anyways because this is important and you're going to do what you set out to do. Then you come into Wednesday, right? And we have that Moon Jupiter conjunction. Everybody's feeling a little bit bigger. Everybody's feeling more capable and optimistic and faithful. And now in between those, the moon conjuncts Neptune, and you start to wobble a little bit. Like, well, maybe like, do I need to be this serious about it? Do I really need to be taking on this much responsibility? And the answer is yes. If you have a way to like work through some of that Neptune energy that doesn't involve you clocking out for the entire day, this is a really good time to embrace that. Whether it is music, listening to songs to recharge in between like long work breaks or anything like that, poetry, anything that is kind of like an act of inspiration or being able to create a little something. Meditation would also be really good. If you don't have anything to do for this day, then sure, it's fine to just kind of like sit and binge with your procrastination tool of choice. But this Sun-Saturn conjunction is going to really kind of be needling at you. Like, you're not going to feel awesome about it. So again, I would go back to using this Neptune conjunction with the moon as like a brief respite from some of the pressures and kind of something that is stabilizing and helping to achieve the goals that you have. Yeah. So that's how you handle Neptune. You know how to do this. Okay. So going on to Friday. Friday is when things get very, very real for a whole bunch of reasons. Okay. So we have our Saturn Cazimi. Saturn Cazimis are kind of tricky because what a Cazimi is it means a planet is in the heart of the sun, right? We talked about a little bit earlier the importance of Saturn being under the beams of the sun. So if a planet is within 15 degrees of the sun on either side, it's considered to be under the beams or under the rays. There's a brief point in between that whole cycle of combustion, right? A planet that is too close to the sun is combust, where they will join at one point. And this period of kind of like detriment and not working properly that comes from combustion is suddenly relieved. And instead, that planet is supercharged for the day that they spend in that tight conjunction, right? So when it comes to Saturn, like, there's a couple of ways that this could go. Like, this could be a very good day for getting back some of those, for some of that endurance that may have been missing in this period. This is also, for anybody who's into it, these are wonderful days for fasting. I've had 2 Saturn Cazimis in a row come up and kind of just like forget what was happening or the purpose of them and just end up accidentally fasting for like 36 hours because I got carried away in whatever I was working on. So, you know, they're very like high charge periods where you can get a lot done. And this one looks like it's going to be even more so because it has the moon ingressing into Aries pretty quickly after here. And on the same day, Mercury goes direct right next to Pluto. So all those unhelpful, unproductive, or maybe they were super empowered thoughts, right, that were coming up. I don't want to say this is necessarily going to be negative for you. They will be Plutonian themes for you. It's going to have to deal with your inner resources, your capacity to show up for dark or tumultuous times, or for things that require you to strive, right? Pluto has that kind of element of like of striving for something that is currently like outside of our means or station. Although I really do like Saturn Kazimis. So I only mostly have positive things to say about it, to be completely honest with you. This is a lot of energy for clarity and for forward movement. You're going to feel a push where like things start to come together. Now we come into this day that's almost like total action. Like this is a day that almost wants you to like not think at all. Just let like that Pluto Mercury instinctual drive take you where you need to go. And that may or may not work out for you. I like if this forward motion is something that you feel like you are ready to get behind. If you've played the week well, you know, and you've kind of followed all these steps as they've come up, you really should have a plan of action that you can just leap into if you want to. Like there isn't really any like big reason, unless you're unprepared for this day, there isn't any reason not to go for it, is what I would say. So, you know, shoot your shot, do whatever you want to do with it. It's a very strong day. And like whether or not you are consciously taking actions, this is a day that is like if you also don't know which direction to go into or where to move and you're still kind of like trying to break through some of those walls, this is a day that has the power to just move you where you need to be. So if you don't have a clear plan of attack, my advice would be get still. Even with all this like activity related transits, you know, that are trying to get into a place where the planets can make you into what they need you to be, right? Just get open. This is like a work obligation, showing up for a chore, doing something like working cheerfully, even if you don't have to, unlocks abundance at a later date situation, right? Yeah, so you guys get it. There's a lot of good stuff that can happen on Friday, and I know that you guys are going to maximize and hack all the magic right out of that transit. Saturday, we're still in an Aries moon. We have Mercury still pretty much still in the sky, isn't really moving too much. Venus has finally started to move. She's moving slowly, but she is moving. And the Sun and Saturn are still conjunct, okay? And then we have this Mars-Jupiter sextile going on. This Mars-Jupiter deal is going to feel really good. This is like a passionate determination, right? This is really, truly from the bottom of your heart believing in whatever you're taking on. And this might be some kind of confirmation as well for the work that you did that you didn't think was like worth anything at the beginning of the week, that you just forced yourself into no matter what. You keep doubling down. You haven't quit. This could be the week where it all just becomes a little bit more, not easy, but synchronized, right? Like you start to get like one piece after another, like you're where you're supposed to be. Monday, we have the moon squaring Pluto, and then we have the moon moving into Taurus. The moon is in the critical degrees of Aries to begin with. And then the square to Pluto is like, again, with these, this time, first it was our unproductive like self-talk, right? Our thoughts and our mentality, and like whether or not we have defeatist attitudes when we're going into challenging situations, or whether or not our thoughts support what we're trying to accomplish. That is very much like, are our thoughts empowering or not? Pluto Mercury. The Pluto Moon square is pretty much guaranteeing that you are having disempowering emotions in a way at this point that you have to, like, you're actively going to have to sit on that and not let your feelings take charge of the show. Because the Aries moon, this is actually my moon placement, so I know all about it. I'm speaking from experience. This is one that wants to like punch first and ask questions later, right? This is not necessarily a placement of Aries that has a ton of emotional control to begin with. Like it's a very, especially with a Mars ruled moon, that is something that wants to skip right over the emotion part and straight into some kind of an action or a reaction or a provocation, you know, just put conflict where there should probably be just like processing and reflection. It could be just a really wrestling to keep yourself from acting outside of your own best interest, right? Letting those feelings dictate your actions in a direction that you don't want to go. That's like the last challenge of this whole Aries moon transit and kind of the week. I know there's like little pitfalls or whatever. And then we get the glory and the honor of moving into a Taurus moon. The Taurus moon is going to feel like a most awesome break from all of this heavy, conflict-driven Aries Martian moon energy that we've been through. But for the most part, this is going to be happening for most of us when we sleep. So it's an energy that you're going to get to wake up to on Monday morning, which Monday starting off next week is going to be a whole different story. but you are growing, you are developing, you are building something of significance. And it's going to be really important to tell yourself that this week because you are so close. Like, you just have to keep going. Whatever you do, you have to keep going. So that's this week. It's rock bottom and then a hard bounce, and it's going to be good. And then by the time we get into next week, a lot is going to be changing astrologically and in the energy. But before we get there, I do want to spend a little bit of time talking about the markets and what I think is going on with them. Basically, what's happening with your markets is that there is no liquidity. There has been such a massive selling push that there is a lot of cash that looks like it's sitting on the sidelines. There's not a real appetite for risk. Appetite for risk means that you're willing to be a little bit more adventurous with where you put your money. You have a higher belief that something's going to happen with it. And when there is no risk appetite in the markets, people just don't invest. You don't see money coming back into assets or into currencies, because this is clearly happening with crypto at the same time. It makes a lot of sense why the North Node in Taurus is affecting the markets and has everybody so risk averse. Taurus is by nature a risk averse sign. One of the first things people notice about Gemini is the recklessness. The North Node in Gemini had the markets taking on some of that flavor. People were willing to wing it, and see what comes of it and collect data afterwards and think it was all useful. Taurus wants material reality, right? Taurus wants to have a guarantee and a return on investment. So right now we are dealing with a 1.5 year cycle of markets maybe feeling like a little bit too wanting to stay in comfort zones, wanting to not take any unnecessary risks. And we need to see some astrology that kind of like pokes at that counteracts that a little bit, right? To get everybody kind of moving back into the right direction. And for me, I really think that some of that, just even a little bit, some of that is going to come when we start to have this Mars-Venus conjunction. It's going to be happening through like the last 3 weeks of February and the first 3 weeks of March. Okay, this goes on forever. Mars and Venus are all about adventure and risk taking, and everybody underneath this transit is going to feel a little bit spicier and wanting a little bit more stimulation, wanting a little bit more thrill seeking. I do think it's going to be perking up the markets. I think it's going to have more people wanting to take action, Mars, with their money, Venus, and it's going to be a little bit harder to sit on the sidelines. We do have some reversal energy that's kind of scheduled for the week, and especially, like I said, this is really going to go into the second week of February. We're going to feel it more because Mercury has to go direct at the end. And this new moon in Saturn, new moon can be times of growth for the indexes, but this is Saturn ruled. Like we said, it's very heavy already. If you're looking for something a little bit more exciting to trade, maybe some swings that have a little bit more meat on them, I do think that is probably around the time that you're going to be looking. Next week, you will get a chance to have fun with all the new tools that you've acquired in this last very heavy peak week of our Saturn winter. So that's really all I have for you this week. Thank you so much for coming back and sticking with me through this. If you haven't had a chance to, please go ahead and hit that like button. Leave me comments. I love feedback. I love hearing what you guys think about this stuff. And take care of yourselves out there. Make good decisions. And I will see you back here next week.